on here. Previously we had seen a command to change permissions. Who can access your file, what they can do with it. What was that command called? Chmod. CHMOD. And we saw how we could specify information, the two types of information that it needs to do it. So what does Chmod need to do its job? There's probably actually three types of information. First of all, you're doing chmod on what? You're modifying the permissions of a file or including a folder, by extension, right? So you're doing it on a file, okay. So that's great. But what other information does it need to do its job? What are you telling it in order to do with that file? Yeah, what changes to make or to the permissions or what permissions you want to impose for this file that you want to use with the file. You should specify both. In order to do that, that's two pieces of information. For whom you're changing that information, for what classes of users, for the owner of the file, for the group in which the file, that person is located, or the group in which that person is located relative to this file, or for all users. So that's one piece of information. The second piece of information is for that set of users, what they can do with the file. And what are the three categories of things they can do with the file? Read it, write it, or execute it. And execute includes like executing the directory, it's like going into the folder, the directory. Okay? So you've got to say something about sort of who and the sort of permissions to use for each such person. And we saw ways of doing that with so-called octal characters, 777 for giving everyone full access to it. But we also saw ways of doing this, such as the owner of the file giving them read-write access to it, etc. Okay, so that was good. But one thing you should know is that you can change the group ownership of a file. What's the relevant group for the file? So when we said group, it's some group that we mean, and we can change which group it is with this. We can also change the owner of a file. If we're a system administrator, we may want to change the owner from one person to another or what have you. Okay, so here's some more commands. I mentioned diff. CMP also can be used to compare files. What do we see WC used for? Word counting. So it counts characters, words, and lines of a file, right? Sorting, sorts of file, unique. Okay, yes, that's right. So if there's a repeated string or a repeated line, it will only print out first, pass that through. Unique goes line by line and asks, is it the same as the last line? So, pick it up there. We saw last time, sometimes we want to sort for that. So we can only, if we have food and then bar and then pass, basically food, bar, and then food, again, it's three lines. And we give it to unique, it will do food, bar, food. Because there's no repeated lines, one after the other. If we wanted it to only show one of the foods, we could sort it. Head and tail, these are very, very useful things that I mentioned earlier. So for head, this will show the first however many lines of its input, and tail, the last however many lines. Okay? So if I want to see, for example, the first line only of this file foobar. So here's this getting rather articulated file foobar. Suppose I wanted to just see the first set of lines of it. I could do head, and I could give it some number, say 1 line, or say 2 lines, or 3 lines. Those are the first few lines of this file, you'll notice, that are coming out of that. Alternatively, I could do tail, and I could show the last line of this file, or the last 2 lines of the file, etc. Okay? So these are ways of sort of only showing pieces of what's shown. And of course, like normal with Unix commands, this is looking for its information on the user input, so I can get it from standard output. So I could say foo bar baz, and if I enter this, what should it give me? Bar and baz, yep, and there we go, bar baz. Alternatively, what I could do is I could say something like ls minus l and look for the last 2 things in this, or I could look for the first 2 things. What are the first 2 things going to be? Anyone remember? There's dot, and there's dot here, and there's actually dot and dot dot here, and so if I did 3 here, the interesting thing is you notice it's only showing me the first file here. Why did it, when I did -2, why did it only show me the first file? Or the first entry here? Because total is a line as well, exactly. Here, if we wanted to see the first 2 files, we would do head -3. Okay, so tail and head, du and df are both disk space. So here it will tell me the amount of disk space associated with all my different files, and if you do man du, it could tell you how to summarize it. Is it in bytes? Is it in megabytes, or what have you? Df will tell you how much space is being used in different file systems within the system as a whole, which is really particularly if used for system administrators, people who are going to be administering all the different things connected up with this system. And we saw more or less. Okay? People had requested seeing some of this. Okay. I wanted to get to, that was just some stuff. Let me stop this.